extra unnecessary weight.
We're laughing here for part 2 because we're talking a little bit about. We started talking about Jerry's excellent YouTube videos. Actually, he's got a YouTube channel. I'll link to that. Which is mostly a lot of race videos. My teammate Masa was telling me he used to take your tubular repair class because I think you had a tubular repair video on there or something. So you must be an expert. Having ridden tubulars, you still ride tubulars?
Yes, I mean I do. Here's the thing about, I wouldn't call it a YouTube channel, I would just call it my YouTube account where I post all kinds of videos like
Occasional race video.
car repairs, motorcycle repairs, race videos and tubular tire repairs.
Random things Jerry Kapko can teach you.
Yes.
Yeah. But there's a good video, for example, like if people want to know, I think it was from last year actually, from one of the CRCA races. I think you got bumped off like my wheel actually at the end when we were doing lead out, and that was one of the 2 CRCA races that happened last year. But there was a moment in there, I think on the last lap, where one of your teammates comes up and he's like, I think you couldn't hear on the camera what he asked, but it was probably something like, do you need me to move you up or something like that? And you said, nah. Very relaxed, and it's like half a lap to go, we're approaching Harlem Hill, we're at the downhill. You're like, nah. By the tavern. It's like, we're good for a while.
I mean, look, like I was saying
so the most relaxed voice, where other people are like, oh my god, now it's getting going, we're going up part of the hill. And Jerry is like sitting 50th wheel somewhere, 40th wheel, and it's just like, by the tavern.
All I can tell you is, if you watch a video of Peter Sagan winning the World Championships in Norway, that finish of that race was so dynamic. You had Alaphilippe attacking and going away and then bridging up. Sagan, if you watch him and you listen to the commentary, he does nothing all day. All day he's sitting at the back of the field, eating well, drinking well, paying attention to who's where and what everybody's doing. Sagan doesn't really have much in the way of support.
Right.
Slovakian team is maybe like 2 teammates, his brother and another guy. But what happens is, once you do those kind of races and you understand the dynamic of a race, you'll see where you understand where you need to be at the end, and that's exactly what he did. He was on the right wheel at the right time going into the finish. He thought, he even himself said, look, I thought the race was over when Alaphilippe attacked. I didn't think they were bringing him back. But that doesn't stop you from, still, it's easy to make mistakes, and it's just not cycling but generally in life, right? You make mistakes all the time. It's what matters is how you deal with the mistakes and how you recover, right? And you can get a flat in a race. You can, make a mistake at work. It's like, trying to ignore the problem or just completely giving up is not the way to win a bike race.
Right. Yeah.
I mean, I've been in races where break was, away 2 minutes in front of us. And that didn't stop me from still going for it. I attacked with one other guy. And the thing is to understand that it's the same pain and the same conditions for everybody. It's equal for the brake too. The brake is getting tired. The field is getting tired, and just because you can't be giving up, and it's a setback that you are 2 minutes behind, or you get a flat and you have to change wheel or something like that doesn't stop you from giving it a shot, right? I bridged up to the brake after a couple of laps in Prospect Park and attacked the brake and got away from the brake. So what I'm saying is, it's not the adverse condition or bad cards that you dealt with. It's how you play them, right? The same thing on Saturday. I'm not the biggest, strongest, most guy with the best teams or something like that, and I don't have the highest, biggest support. Like I don't have a lead-out sprinter or a sweeper or something like that. But I try to understand the race, read the race, and try to make a decision on the fly and take chances. And I took a chance. And look, Christoph and Ralph took a chance with me because they know, believe it or not, people start paying attention and they realize that Jerry Kapko won the sprint competition in Masters, so he must be a good sprinter. But
Yeah.
that didn't stop them from taking me with them, because it can happen to anybody. Who knows? I mean, I've sprinted for race wins against way stronger people, but they bent their chain rings. The guy is so strong that his chain ring bent. There's this guy in New Jersey I sprinted against. I was in a break in like one of the races leading up to Somerville on Saturday, I think. And I was there with Bill, one of the guys from. He's like a commentator.
I'll take the check, thank you. Or do you want another drink? Or,
I'm good.
Okay, good. Thank you.
And one guy from, and the guy was, please. The guy was so strong that he bent his chain ring, right? So all of a sudden, my chances of winning the race went doubled up, right?
Yeah.
And that's the thing you have to realize. Like, I was sprinting against somebody also, and their, derailleur pulleys skipped or something, and the guy's chain dropped or something. So you never know. You still have to believe. The race is not over until you cross the finish line.
Yeah, 100%. We could talk about racing for forever, but let's switch a little bit back to. So you already said the wall came down, the former Soviet Union and all the Eastern Bloc countries kind of changed shape and all that. And at some point in the 90s, you made it to the US. You came to the US, you went to college here. We could talk, that would be really interesting too, I'm sure. And there's probably a lot more from a personal level, but we'll keep your personal life sort of out of it as much as you want to talk about it. But from a cycling perspective, you said you had gone through the junior development system until 18 or a little bit later?
Yeah, 18.
And then you came over here. How was that transition? And you picked up mountain biking. So how was that transition in the 90s and 2000s then? How did you come to where you are now?
I mean, when after I landed in New York, before New York, I spent like 6 months in Spain where I learned the language. But I wasn't biking at that point. I was just not interested in the sport at that time. I was prioritizing other stuff. I think the camera.
Oh, yep, thank you.
And so, are you taking that?
Yeah, no, I'm taking it. Yeah. Sure? Always.
Thank you. And so coming to the US, after you sort out your basics, the hierarchy of priorities, you have food, shelter, then you move to other things.
Yeah.
So I think, I got my first bicycle, like a racing level bicycle, which was a mountain bike, maybe in like 96, 97. I wasn't really riding or racing. I just got it, and then I started, looking up events. It was mostly mountain bike events in like New Jersey.
Yeah.
So I signed up for a couple of them, and
So mountain biking.
Mountain bike.
At that point, you said you had mountain bike in Slovakia already?
Yeah, I mean mountain bike was a really
it
like
came up in the 80s or
it was an emerging.
From the US though, so it was probably a little later there.
It was an emerging discipline that really interested me because I felt comfortable off road and just in general it was interesting. I thought I knew everything about road racing or track racing or cyclocross. I mean, mountain bike was like a mix between, cyclocross you race at the junior level up to like 30, 40 minutes, right? Mountain bike was more like hour and a half.
Yeah.
Whereas road races is 2+ hours, 3 hours sometimes. So it's like a mix between road and cyclocross with a little distance. More distance, fatter tires, bigger circuit. So I started looking up events in New Jersey, New York, most like ski resorts like Plattekill, Hunter, and Mountain Creek, all those. And for me, growing up in Slovakia, we have very, hilly terrain, like for example, Connecticut, Westchester, sharp,
Short, not super
sharp,
long climbs, but enough, lots of
I mean, we have big mountains, but not really like Alpine level or Dolomites, more like, Catskills.
Right.
And so those mountain resorts, I ended up doing really well in mountain biking because I just was like climbing well, I had decent. I didn't put on much weight since junior year, so I was okay.
Yeah.
Working in construction, you
Okay. Yeah.
you don't sit around. You're on your feet all day long,
Yeah.
right? So, but then, as I was studying in college, I took on, desk jobs and things like that, and really just doing not just cycling, but in general, any kind of sports will open up a lot of doors. You get to know a lot of people.
Yeah.
So through cycling, I got to know, some people in finance who, connected me with, jobs, and just like having, sport opened a lot of doors for me, and I'm very, fortunate and grateful, and I recommend it to anybody. It doesn't matter what sport. You have pockets of sports enthusiasts in New York, regardless of any esoteric sport like volleyball or water polo. You find fencing. You find the people in that circle, and they will appreciate you. So cycling was really helpful for me, because at the time Lance Armstrong was up and coming, and cycling was very popular, not just in Europe as it always has been, but in America. So just people riding, seeing after a few years of riding mountain bikes, I moved to Park Slope, and I took up road cycling just because Prospect Park was right there, and going to races from Brooklyn to New Jersey and Pennsylvania and Connecticut, it's a lot of traffic, sitting in traffic and driving to venues. But if you have local bicycle race in Prospect and Central and Floyd Bennett, I eventually transitioned to road cycling, and it was an easy transition for me because I knew everything there was to know, from like the basics, right? I didn't have to learn how to draft. I didn't have to learn what bicycle I needed. I knew exactly what I needed, and when I started lined up for a race, I was comfortable riding in the field. I knew how to change and position myself in the wind, and so it wasn't a difficult thing for me, right? But that's not the case for most people in the United States, probably.
Right, because let's face it, we don't really have that. And we already touched on, there is no consistent. There are some clubs or junior development teams, but it's not nearly as broad of a net, kind of as tight of a net as it is in Slovakia, where you have a lot more.
Or in Europe. I mean, if you want to touch up maybe on development, like I guess you guys, probably know. You can see my results. I raced between like 2000 to 2006-7. I did mostly road, and I did, all that you can do locally within New Jersey, Connecticut.
Right.
I never really traveled further than just like, those tri-state area.
I mean, we're in the luxury
for
position.
bicycle races.
You can do 60, 70 races a year here if you want to.
Exactly.
In this area.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, my first racing career was racing juniors between ages of 11 to 18. Then I raced here, between 2000 and 2007. Then my first daughter was born, so I just quit racing.
Yeah.
I was still, Wonder Wheels is more like a club,
Yeah.
It's masters, and it's mostly family guys. Dino Boundaries, who's the owner of Wonder Wheel, is also a family guy. So, for everybody out there, if you guys, every time you go to Coney Island, be sure to stop by Dino's Wonder Wheel Amusement Park.
The guys are often riding. I don't know, I've never seen you in the park outside of a race, but there's lots of, every time I go to the park, there's usually at least one Dino rider training. So you guys are pretty Brooklyn.
They support, the amusement park support cycling, and they do community, service, and they do, employment from within community, and all the good stuff that they do. So please do visit them. But after my daughter was born, I stopped racing for like 10 years, and then I was still cycling, just not.
Right.
I didn't do like 4-hour training rides to 9W or something like that. I just did basic commuting and maybe ride to Rockaways, on the weekend. But then I always wanted to get back to racing once I became master. And in 2017, my daughter's things kind of aligned. I was able to get in more training, so I started racing again. like mid to end of 2017, and then 2018, 19, we started racing again. But again, my daughters are older now, so you can leave them home alone. You know, my wife
Right.
likes to go running, so we don't have to supervise our kids so much. So there's more freedom, right? So you can do more things. And like I said, most people in New York don't have that background, and I think we have some ways to, you know, help with development. I mean, like there are local teams like Star Trek
Right.
and you know Fernando Cuevas guys.
Right.
They have their junior team. You know, Alex Koch is now running races where he gives like free entry to
Yep.
juniors, which I think is great.
Yeah.
So there are some efforts. From my point of view, like I think in the United States it's a liability.
CRCA has under 23. I need to plug, but yeah.
Yeah, CRCA development.
Yeah.
But here in the United States, you have a liability issue, right? Because in Europe, you don't have to worry about liability that much because you have universal healthcare system. So if somebody gets hurt, they have free healthcare, right? They get taken care of. Here in the United States, let's say I wanted to take, you know, a few juniors out on a training ride and show them how to pace or something at Floyd Bennett or
First question
Jamaica
is
Bay.
always
It's like you have to what is it that you're trying to do? What happens if somebody gets hurt?
Yeah.
You have to have waivers, you have
Yeah.
to have insurance. It has to be more than just like, hey guys, let's go out and
Yeah. Yeah.
do, you know, let me show these, you know, underage kids how to car pace, you know.
Right.
I can't.
Yeah.
So you can't do that. Maybe on a close course, maybe out of town, definitely not in New York. So when I was a junior, we did motor pacing, we did close course, time trial. I got hurt one time on a time trial because I was stupid to put my head down,
Yeah.
and I rear-ended a car when I was like 14 or 15. You know, that can happen, right? But you have to anticipate those risks. And it wasn't a big deal in Slovakia, but in the United States, you know, the parents will come and, you know, you go to jail or something like that. You don't want that to happen. So,
Yeah.
so I think we have a difficulty from that matter, but I think what we're doing now is, or we can do now, is being inclusive and offering people to, you know, join our rides,
Yeah.
offering juniors to join our rides. You know, we have, you know, women joining the racing, and that was the same when I grew up. You know, we had girls on the team.
Right.
We welcome everybody, and that's what we need to do. You know, we need to develop people. We need to make them feel welcome because, you know, you never know. The kid down the street who is an immigrant from Mexico, he could be the next, you know, Lance Armstrong or
Yeah.
Bernal or something like that.
Right. Yeah.
So you could have a world champion like. We had a professional rider from CRCA, Evelyn Stevens, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
She was just like, you know, joined CRCA. She was riding her bike, and a few years later, she's a pro. So, and that I think is great, and we can, you know, continue to do that for juniors, for women, for we don't discriminate. You know, we want everyone to join us and compete, and you know, we don't have to have necessarily separate fields. What we can do is have separate scoring. Right?
Mm-hmm.
You can have you know, gender neutral scoring. You can have age differentiated scoring.
Yeah. Okay.
You can have, you know, different level category scoring. I think you have separate women's field right these days, but they're scored differently by category or by age. I don't think I think what we are doing is what we have to do better is propose solutions, right?
Yeah.
Everybody wants to race, let's say, and you feel like you need to be scored in your separate category. What is stopping us? We have the video equipment, we have the chips. You just, you know, these days you can select in CRCA, I want to be scored as master or 1, 2, 3.
Yeah.
Why not offer that to everybody, you know? And
So-
okay, maybe USCF doesn't allow you to mix Cat 5s with 1, 2, 3s, and 4s or something like that. Maybe there are some restrictions, but it's just every problem has a solution, right? So you can offer different solutions to different problems and then come up with options, and people can decide what they want. I don't think excluding transgender people from competing in a particular field is necessarily the way to go. I think what IOC or state or government level organization or sanctioned organization should do is introduce separate scoring. What if I want to compete with women? That should be my option. But is it fair that I should be scored at the same level as somebody who is naturally different, has different predispositions or limitations?
So the example would be at, like, for example, for a club like CRCA, maybe have a separate beginners field, but everybody else starts together, and then you can get scored separately. That's like one example.
That's an example.
Right.
I'm saying that it doesn't have to be that way, but what we can do, like we had a problem with, juniors being mixed up or racing together with women and causing some crashes. Here, you have to understand that, when I was a junior, I used to crash a lot too. Juniors are that's the way they are. They crash a lot, and
that's how you learn too, right?
That can happen, and I don't think it's fair to other categories to be exposed to that. But on the other hand, you have to also look at it this way: how else are we going to develop juniors? Other than just throwing them in the fire and seeing how they survive. When I was a junior, there was a stage race locally in the town where I was living, and so as part of that organization committee, we got the privilege to race with real elite riders. As a junior, I was maybe 16, 17. I wasn't eligible under normal circumstances to race in an elite field, but they let us anyway because we were part of the organization town or something. So we got that, privilege to do that. I raced one time. I was maybe 14 or 15. I went to a stage race to Ukraine, which was then USSR, the Soviet
right next
Union.
door, basically.
Exactly. And guess what? Do you think we raced separately? No. They threw us all with like elite, Russian elite riders, racers. These are national level people. This wasn't a joke.
These are the truly state sponsored, going to the Olympics, maybe.
Exactly. But how else are you going to develop juniors if you don't offer them that chance, right? So we have to kind of, there is a problem, but it's not our job to point out problems, right? It's easy to do that. What's more adding value is proposing a solution. Look, here's how I think we can address that issue, right? And I think it's not just cycling, it's in general. You're not there to identify problems and point out, mistakes or showing people, oh, you did this wrong. Here's how I think you can improve. Here's what we think you can do better. Here's I made this mistake in a race. Here's what you can do next time to prevent it, right? So on the development front, maybe New York is not the perfect place to develop juniors. Maybe there are places that are more favorable for that. But in general, you have talent everywhere. I mean, you have individual pursuit record holder before Ghana became the man.
Who's afraid?
There was an American guy. Ashton Lambie, right? From Middle America, cornfields. The guy just has massive engine. There's probably a guy like that, living.
They didn't figure it out until he was like in his mid-20s or something like that.
What I'm saying is they are out there. All you have to do is offer them the chance to race and be, inclusive and offer them, take them in and see if they want to do that. I mean, there are talented riders who don't want to do cycling. There's been many people who have huge engines who just like abandon cycling because they want to do music or something else.
Which is fair, right?
Which is fair.
If you have the talent or you have the interest.
It's a free country. You can do what you like.
Yeah. But I think you're right. And I think, given there being more exposure, maybe, and more opportunities for the young kids to get into at least try racing, right? Because it was fairly easy for you to do that because it was one of the many things that was very obviously offered in your town, right? And in New York City, it's a little harder to find, and I think we can do a better job even though a lot of people are working on that, of publicizing the opportunities and making it a thing.
You know, every time you see a kid on a bike and you're riding by, just say, hey, let's go race to next light or something.
Yeah.
And this way they get them excited, and you plant a seed, 2-3 years later, you don't know, maybe the guy will pick up cycling, you don't know.
Yeah.
You know?
Or girl. Yeah, absolutely. Or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I think those are really wise words, and it's almost like a good ending point. But I'm not gonna let you off the hook yet. I think we had one or two more topics. I think you've already said, I think, what you want to see change a little bit, which is largely you're really concerned about, and I think that comes from your background as somebody who has gone through a really solid, well-organized, well-supported junior development program, right? You're clearly missing that here, it looks like. And you would like, it doesn't have to be what you had in Slovakia, but something to be there that makes it easier and makes it more, makes it easier for people to be in there and gives them more opportunities, right? To experience racing or just cycling as a sport, right?
I mean, just like getting into communities. I mean, look at what well-paid sports are doing. Hockey or baseball or things like that. They have scouts. They have coaches going to games, local games, and scouting talent, right? In hockey, you have people coming to like junior or development games and picking up next talents, right? You don't have that in cycling because it's a different kind of sport and it's not that well paid. So it's not like there's huge money in cycling, unless you're in maybe Belgium or maybe Italy. I don't know. Cycling is definitely not sport to get into because it's well paid. we all know that.
I mean, and here now with the rise of like Nike and mountain bike cycling in high schools, I think that it's at least somewhat of like a natural like entry point, but road cycling doesn't really happen at the high school level for the most part. It barely happens at the collegiate level. It does happen at the collegiate level, but it's still kind of unsupported. So that's kind of missing too, I think. To have that scouting system, right? You have to have that feeder system too.
Which doesn't happen. I mean, the feeder system you're talking about, like the development system that I know, that I grew up, that still exists at a certain level. Maybe it's not as well, funded as it used to, and maybe the cost of running races has gone up and things like that. But with that came also unless you became a professional by the age of 18, you were finished, right? So there was no future for you in terms of like racing, bicycle racing. You either made it by the age of 18 or you didn't. So then you moved on to like a regular civilian life, right? But now in Europe you also have the rise of the masters level races and organized.
Like here too, right?
The same way is here, right?
When I talked to Charlie, like he was mentioning the same thing. Back in the day, there were no masters races because then you became a coach or you were done with racing, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
But now you have the the crowds of people wanting to do well in cycling. You have the Grand Fondos.
Yeah.
I mean, those are. I never organized one, so I don't know. I suspect those are pretty good money makers, and that's what I feel like organizers should do. As not telling anybody that that they're doing something wrong. I feel like if I were an organizer like that, and there was money to be made or saved, I would probably put part of that money towards development, like offering, setting up, let's say Star Trek or something like that may have like a team van, for example, with roof racks, so people can travel to races on weekends, right? I don't know if they have that or they don't, but that would be an example where I would say, okay, you have retired cyclists who don't have to go to work anymore. Older guys, maybe they're 60s, who may be interested in helping out because they're bored. I don't know. I don't know what I'll be doing when after my kids are out of the house and they finish college and I'm not interested in working anymore. Maybe I'll do coaching or do some kind of things, or maybe not. I don't know, but that would be something that I would propose people think about. if they want to develop the next level of, same thing for manufacturers, right? The next level of customers could be coming from those, high schools and elementary schools, just developing talent and doing racing and grand pondos and gravel and cyclocross. And cross sport, compatibility, because you have swimmers, runners, triathletes who might be, interested in cycling, runners who are injured, who cannot run anymore, but they would be good at cycling, for example.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a huge
Michael
segment.
Woods of this world and all that. Yeah.
I mean, on Wonder Wheels we had Haluk Sarci, who was on Turkish national team.
I didn't know that. Okay.
I think runner, right? So you have people who, in New York, you have all these former, national level team members that, you have a couple of Polish guys, like this guy Stasiu. He rode in Peace Race back in those, when Peace Race was still on. He was on the national Polish tour, right? You have Radosław Smolaga, who is a really strong sprinter.
That's
Again,
what I was thinking of.
a masters racer. He's in his, maybe he's maybe 50 years old. But again, this is a national level, world championship team track racer, right? You have talent.
Still has the big thighs.
Yeah. I mean, those guys, they know how to sprint. It's they've gone through the program. You have muscle memory. It's easy for people to, switch on and, do a few training rides. But for me, I don't have to think about positioning. I don't have to think about, is this guy going to cut me off? It's never going to get to that, because I'm never going to get too close or cross wheels with somebody. I mean, it can happen to anybody, right? But
it can happen.
I don't have to think about it too much to prevent that from happening.
Yeah, that's exactly right. Yeah.
So
We've been saying that.
you race road, you've raced mountain bike, maybe not that much at the moment. I know you race some cross at least as your time and schedule allows with family life. You race on the track, same as it allows. And unfortunately, you're pretty close to the track in Queens. Well, there's two things I want to talk a little bit more about. We've talked about the junior development piece, but as a racer or commuter, because you're also a big commuter, like, has New York City gotten better for bike riding and or racing? Whatever. We don't have time to talk about all the separate disciplines because you know about all of them, but that would be a whole another 2 hours. But overall, like, since you've arrived here, and maybe you were shocked in the beginning about how good or bad this infrastructure was for cycling, or has it gotten better overall? You've seen the Lance Armstrong heydays where there were like crits of Wall Street and all that, and is this a better place that we're in right now, or is this a worse place, or is it a bit of both, or what do you think? For cycling in general or racing?
I can tell you two things, two topics, right? Racing and general commuting. So when I started commuting, and these are my personal views, right? When I started commuting back in, like, say, 98, 97, there were no bike lanes, there were no, it was very, like, freewheeling, nobody cared about cycling, nobody cared about cyclists in general. So unless you were a messenger, I mean, really just the messengers and some idiots like, me commuting, taking my bike to places. Those were the only people out on bicycles, right? So you had to be a hardcore bicycle messenger, or just like either cheap or ignorant to pay for subway, or to realize the risks there you'd be commuting, right?
Yeah.
Not only that, but you get your bike stolen. I mean, I lost like a couple of bikes, even from my apartment where I used to live, it just disappeared. So you can't have nice equipment in New York in general for commuting, but over the years, especially during the Bloomberg years, they started building bike paths, they started building, corridors. And I am not personally a fan of that. I understand why it happened, and I think it's good and beneficial in the long term for the city, because it offers people who would otherwise not have taken up cycling a chance, or kind of gives them sort of room to do that, right? The reason I don't like it is twofold. One is it gives you false sense of security, because it makes you feel like you are protected, which you are not. You have trucks unloading in front of you, people stepping in front of you. I mean, I've made that mistakes myself as a pedestrian. I've stepped in front of
which is fine.
people on a bicycle into a bike lane, so I know exactly. And people have done that to me. Luckily, I haven't had any serious crashes, but it's the false sense of security and two regulation. You know, Bloomberg was all about turning this every little aspect of city life into a business. You know, he turned. He constructed bike lanes, in my opinion, and I could be a conspiracy theorist in that regard, but he wanted to regulate cycling, right? Because as a cyclist, you don't need a license, you don't need insurance, you don't need registration. You can zigzag through cars and escape.
That topic is coming up right now too in the numero of regulating it more.
And that's what I didn't like about those bike lanes, right?
Right.
Is the underlying tone was regulation, and I did not like that. But in the overall schemes, it's again not finding problems but finding solutions, right? So me personally, because I do like to ride fast, I generally avoid avenues with bike lanes if I can. I mean, if it depends on what I do, right? If I'm in a rush summer or if I'm commuting,
right.
I try. I'm usually as fast as cars or faster, so I just try to take up my own lane. I mean, it's gonna piss off a few people, but so be it. But at that same token, I'm trying to be safe, anticipating risks. Right? If I can go through Central Park or some uncrowded places, I do that, right? Because I want to avoid conflict with pedestrians and cars.
Also about like this college of a function.
So that's really my take on commuting, right? The rise of bike lanes in New York. I mean, in Slovakia that doesn't exist. There's no money. Everything is stolen, grabbed, things like that. So there's never money for bike lanes. But Western Europe, you know, Belgium, Holland, Denmark, it's nice to have bike lanes, right? But my personal experience has never been a bike lane. I always rode on regular roads. Now, as far as racing, how has racing changed? You know, during my period of racing in New York City, in terms of road races, like Prospect Central, you know, big out-of-town races, and then, you know, Mangoni and Harlem Crater, things like that. I used to race I did different categories. I did Cat 3s, and I did P12s. I did Jiminy Peak and races like that in P12. And the local races have always been dangerous in a sense that if or when it came to a field sprint, there was huge risk of crashes because you have people who just swing their bikes too much. And there was a lot of conflict also, and elbow shoving, and people, you know, you're supposed to, you know, keep your hands on the handlebars. And let me tell you, that was not the case. There was a lot of punching going on back in those days, you know, when you had Wilson Vasquez, who beat anybody, all the pros. I mean, he's a local guy. Maybe, you can have him on the talk, maybe. People would be interested in his views. But you had Pollo, you had Puya, you have the Barros brothers. I mean, those things was a suicide. It was a suicide to participate in those sprints, so I never did it. Maybe that, you know, I was always risk avoidant, so I either tried to break away, and if I didn't, so be it. I just like eased off for the fields, but I didn't want to get mixed up with those guys. But now, when I came back, started racing back in 2017-18, and again, this is more in the masters category. There is more room. It's less dangerous. There is not so much, you know, people don't swing their bikes as much. I mean, it can happen, but there is fewer guys who are at that level. There's maybe 10 guys who sprint for it. Whereas if you go to a Cat 3 race or 1-2-3 race, there is more junior guys who think they can prevail, and, you know, they end up crossing wheels or something. So it's I feel like that racing in masters is less has been less dangerous in my experience. That's why I've been, you know, more willing to take the risk, to do the field sprints and try to be competitive, and it has worked out for me, you know. But, you know, back in the day it was more dangerous. So in that regard, it has changed. The other thing that has changed is
that because, can I interrupt real quick? Is that because the races have become less competitive, you think?
At masters levels, it's
masters
slower.
obviously is different from 1-2.
It's slower, but
but even like the 1-2-3 now versus, you talk about Wilson, Vasquez, and other guys who.
I think there is. No, I think there were more. there was more beef going around. Like
Okay.
there was more emotion in it.
Yeah.
Now you have people. I don't think there is so much like it's not so personal. Back in the day, there was a lot of like ego. There was a lot of like. I mean, don't get me wrong. It was fun to witness
Yeah.
it.
Yeah.
But to come out, to crash was never fun.
No.
Be involved in those crashes if people like purposely did something, which might. I mean, I ain't necessarily saying that happened, but it could have been the case
Yeah.
sometimes. There were some crashes. I mean, most of the time people walk away from it. But so I would say there is less personal like agenda going on, and it's because back in the day you had Mengoni, who had some. I don't know if there was ever any like coaching within the team. You had some. I mean, I raced with some people who were not very nice.
Yeah.
And if I found out that somebody on my team did something stupid, like drag people's jersey or
Yeah.
doing things like that, I would not hesitate to say something.
Yeah.
But there was like the Barrows brothers. They were always one team. Then you had Mengoni. Then you had some Ideal Tile guys, and you had people from abroad like Argentinians, and you always had the Dominican. Coming together and working as a team. That's all great, but it became dangerous at times,
Right.
unnecessarily. But now, I mean, there is respect. There is really fast guys, and I just feel like there isn't, or I haven't witnessed any like moments where people punch each other or purposefully like bump
very
you
rare.
or things like
Yeah.
that. Maybe
Yeah,
at
yeah.
pro level, but I haven't seen it locally in our races.
Yeah.
I mean, I know how to do it, and I've been subject to it, so I know how to make sure I don't end up on the ground. And this is again something that you do when you're a junior, when you're developing. We did all that with my buddies. We leaned on each other.
Yeah.
I'm talking about on a grass, right? You
Right.
lean on each other. You practice falling when it's like snow. You just like fall into a snowbank, or in the fall when you have a lot of leaves, you fall into leaves. You practice falling. You go on the steepest downhill and you try to ride it. I'm talking about like really steep downhills. In cyclocross, sometimes we had courses where you literally were going down at a 45-degree pitch into a lake, and there was like a hairpin, and if you knew how to take that hairpin and hold your momentum, there was an immediate uphill. So you could actually ride up that steep uphill right away without doing anything, but you had to learn that. It was a skill, right?
Yeah.
It's like a BMX pump tracks.
Yeah.
So just knowing and having that experience and knowing how to recover from a fall, unclipping your pedal has to be instinctive. I was in a situation earlier this year in the Farmington crit. Somebody crossed my wheel because people, when they attack, they don't attack straight. They go sideways and they attack under like 40 or 30 degree angle when they attack, and they cut you off, right? But luckily, I unclipped my foot immediately, put my foot down to avoid falling. Or sometimes you see younger person like diving the corner at the same speed as you are, and there is no way they don't understand. They can't make the same, turn at that speed without putting you in danger, T-boning you or something like that. And just like seeing that happen, you immediately brake and go straight instead of turn, because that guy is not going to turn. He's going to go straight. But that doesn't, you need to practice that. And I feel like a lot of masters racers, that should be on everybody's program, like practice off-road riding, practice riding in the mud with slick tires, trying to go on the grass field and try to take the corner with slick tires on the wet grass at the limit, until you are at the point when you fall. I mean, you're not going to hurt yourself sliding on a grass, but you have to understand what happens when the conditions are like that. You have to be careful.
Yeah.
Just like there's a lot of masters racers who get injured from because of stupid things, like they couldn't jump the curb. They don't know how to lift their front wheel to jump the curb if something crazy happens, and they go head over heels and break their spine or something. You never want to see anybody getting injured, but how do you prevent that? You know, you go practice, you go ride in the sand a little bit and fall and practice. I mean, it sounds like, you know, something that kids would do, and that's exactly what kids would do. And I highly recommend it for anybody to like, you know, take your road bike, go ride on the grass, and take a corner, really sharp corner until you fall. And you need to understand how falling is gonna happen. You may fall on your hip, on your butt, on your elbow, how to break the fall, or how not to break the fall, of course. You know, you can practice as much as you want. The reality is gonna be different, but at least you can try to understand the different surfaces and how that's gonna impact your riding. You know, I highly recommend cyclocross, mountain biking, just getting off your bike and carrying your bike, or going over rocks. It's gonna, you know, it's not only good for your preventing injuries, but also your brain. You know, you're training your brain to deal with things like that. So, you know, Alzheimer's patients, they can barely walk. They cannot walk by themselves or stand up from their bed, but you put them on a bicycle and they can ride.
Oh yeah.
So the brain is like there's just different connections with bicycle riding.
I think you had an excellent point. I think you had another point there, so if that comes back to you. But I'm gonna transition and ask you. So if you have anything else, feel free to add. But I'm gonna ask you about your personal goals. You just hit 45 plus masters category, which gives you a few more competitive options. Let's put it that way. I already asked you if you, from what I understand, you have been to masters nationals before. I personally think you'd be competitive at least. In at least some of the disciplines. I don't know about cross. Have you been to cross nationals? But you said maybe something close, right? And that, again, like for example, Masters Road Nationals are in Albuquerque, New Mexico this year, which is an elevation too, so that's a whole other thing for us flatlanders here in New York City. So that might not be the year, but is that something on the go? What's here? Like you've already mentioned, you have so much experience, so I think you probably get a kick out of winning something, or even just competing on the regular. You wouldn't be doing it otherwise, right? You still race quite a lot on the track, cross, a lot of road. Like the last 3 races I've been in, you were always into. You're doing 2 days a weekend, you know. So you're not losing motivation. So you're gonna be happy with this? You're looking for something else? What's the next step?
Here's my recipe, right, to stay motivated and stay in the game, right? Because in my case, I always look to the next thing. What is my next goal, and what do I need to do to get there, right? I raced at top level, and I know exactly what it takes to prepare for a high-level race, whether it's Bear Mountain, whether it's Tour of Connecticut, or whatever. I know those hills. I've raced with those guys. I know what, when I was competitive, I know exactly how I got there. I know what weight I need to be to be competitive in those races, right? I know the mistakes to avoid and how to position myself and things like that. So to stay motivated, I always look to the next, what's next? What's my next goal, right? So a lot of people, maybe they get discouraged after end of July or end of August. They feel like they're burned out, and because their road is their life, and then afterwards, you don't really have anything to do between September and December until you start thinking about Spring Series or CRCA or something like that. For me, it's quite different, right? Because for me, the road season starts in March, right? And it ends, let's say, in August or September, right? But today is June, so I know I did my work. I'm doing races because, let's be honest, right? And I think this is what people should realize. If you want to do well in training, yes, go and train a lot and be good in segments. You want to do Strava segments, gather KOMs, great. You want to be good at racing, you want to win races, or you want to do well in races, you have to race. You cannot replicate training, you cannot replicate race efforts with training. You will never be able to do that.
Yeah.
Maybe if you do an uphill time trial like they have in the UK, if you want to practice for that, or you're a time trialist, yes, maybe you can solely do that, and that's your discipline. But road racing, crits, omnium racing, track racing, all those things, cyclocross, you will not be able to do that. So you have to race. For me, I take every race that I line up as building my engine, building my body to get used to racing, and preparing for the next goal, right? So we are in June, and I feel like I've done well with early races. I basically, if I stop racing now, I'll still be good because I won a race and I placed well.
Yeah.
But that's not why I do them, right? I do them so I can get my body more comfortable at those efforts, build that engine, build that endurance in racing, build those muscles that you need for road racing. And I know if I do those 20 races or 30 races, I'll do well in cyclocross, because cyclocross starts in September, runs through October and November, right? So if I do a lot of races now between June, July, and August, as much as I can. I mean, I'm not going to go out of my way to travel to Super Week and
Right.
Dairyland, Tour of Dairyland, or
Right.
whatever it's called.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna do that because I have a family. It's not the only thing I live for. I do it for fun. So for me, it's all about fun and having fun and staying. That's how I stay motivated. I just look to the next, goal, which is cyclocross for me.
Mm-hmm.
And then as soon as I'm done with cyclocross, and again, that comes because I'm comfortable and I'm good at it. So I know I can do well in cyclocross races against young guys. I can do well in cyclocross races against older guys. By the time cyclocross is finished, it's end of November,
Yeah.
and then it's only 3 months
Yeah.
till 1st of March,
Yeah.
and you're like, okay, now I can do longer rides. Now I can,
Yeah.
I worked so hard. Racing can be expensive. It can cost you $50 each race plus
Yeah.
commuting.
Yeah.
So let's say you do 40 races, it costs you $2,000-3,000.
Yeah.
I've invested so much money. I'm not just gonna let it all just evaporate,
Yeah.
I've built up all this endurance, all these racing muscles, my lungs are at good shape. I did cyclocross. Those are short, races with high, intensity.
Mm-hmm.
So all I need to do to be ready in race shape for March 1st is do like 1 or 2 hard rides, short hard efforts, and do a weekend, endurance, 3-4 hour rides if I go to Nyack or Piedmont. That's all I have to do. I don't, I'm not in, and that's what keeps me motivated. I am not doing 6-hour rides. I don't put in like 300, 300 kilometer rides or something like that, 20-hour weeks. That would be waste of time in my opinion. It's about
For the races we do. Yeah.
for the races we do. Okay, if you're a pro, then you're a pro. You even pros during off season. Our season. There's no reason to take off, because what are you gonna recover from 15,000 kilometers that you did in the year? That's nothing, right?
Yeah.
If you're a pro, you're doing 40,000 kilometers. Yes, maybe you need 1 or 2 months of recovery, and then you start again. But in our case, amateur case, that's how you stay motivated. You switch from road to gravel, for example, because that's more endurance and it's not too complicated. You don't have to. There's plenty of gravel roads around here. So pick some discipline or something that excites you. Downhill skiing, cross country skiing. Something where that you can do to cross train your legs or your endurance or something like that. To keep your conditioning, to stay motivated. That's how I view it. And then once you have that, you don't have to, spend a lot of time on the bicycle, because I have a full-time job or two. You have family, you have obligations, you want to relax. I like drinking beer or wine, or I don't want to limit myself. I cannot tell my wife, come home and say, "Oh, honey, I can't drink wine today because I have a race tomorrow, so I'm, no go." My wife will look at me like, "Are you nuts? What's wrong with you? You're a 45-year-old guy. What do you think is gonna happen to you?" I'm like, that's what I say. Like, I won that race because instead of having 2 glasses of wine, I had 3. And you have to understand the physiology. The liver is your energy cell. It stores
Glycogen.
it
Yeah.
stores glycogen.
Yeah.
And carb loading, drinking wine or beer will
A lot of carbs.
It's a lot of carbs, and
Yeah.
that's how it works. By racing cross, I've learned to to taper, to prepare for a race, not to do any crazy training like day or two in advance. Just like
Right.
relax and do the best you can. That's all you can do. And again, this is for fun. We're having fun.
We are.
And if
Well, I always say, like, if you're not having fun, you gotta quit it. Like, you gotta stop. You gotta change whatever you're doing. Yeah.
yeah.
I think everybody should sign up to the Jerry Kapko School of approaching
Thought.
cycling. Cycling thoughts on cycling.
Philosophy.
Maybe you should go to coaching. I think your program is unlikely
Look,
to
I-
break people, and I think you would learn a lot.
I will, and I help everybody I can, but I just not that stage in my life where I can do like a junior development or something like that. I mean, I offered to consult for the CRCA development team for
Yeah.
cyclocross. There's just not right now there is no facility for that.
Right.
I mean, anybody who's interested in cyclocross or cycling in general can reach out to me. I'm happy to help. I'm volunteering as a mechanic for my teammates if they have any issue. Like I like building my own bikes, and I know all there is to know about bicycle mechanics and building bikes. And
Once again, check out his YouTube channel. He's got even the race footage.
mean, look,
he doesn't
I don't
do the
write-
fancy edits for 10 minutes with comments, but that's actually better in my opinion. I mean, you can see with my super long videos that I approach it from the long angle, and I'm not a fan of the 10-minute highlights because that only tells you so much. I think watching a race from his perspective really tells you a lot about being efficient and being smart about moving. And you don't win every race. Nobody wins every race. And then I think that's normal, right? It's the game we're playing. But I think you can learn a lot from Jerry. Jerry, it's been almost another hour for the second part, and you told me we should keep it short.
that's what I'm telling you. It's
Yeah.
so easy
Nobody
to
wants
get
to listen.
carried away.
Yeah.
It's so boring.
I know, it's so boring. We're having a good time anyway, though. So I'll see you. What's Saturday? No, Sunday for CSCA. And I know you got Harlem Skyscraper on the list. And you're doing 40 plus at
I'm
Pistola.
gonna show up. I don't know if
Park.
I'll be
Okay.
competitive after eight laps in
He
Central
says
Park.
that, and then he gets third in the sprint or first, and then we'll see from there. It was a pleasure. I'll give you a fist bump. Jerry Kapko.
Thank you.
Reach out to him. Say hi if you see him. Prospect Park World Champion until the next race.
Until
So-
until next week.